When I moved to New York, I mean, I was overwhelmed. It was when I was 17 years old. And just being like independent for the first time was like terrifying for me. I had total anxiety, you know? Basically everything when I go to New York and see the museums like was an epiphany experience where I just felt like this was the place where real meaning was, you know? So you see Warhol or Basquiat or Keith Haring paintings. Leon was like a big influence. Before that, in Seattle, we knew this guy named Jacob Lawrence, who was one of the first black painters that was like kind of collected by museums in New York in the 40s. Super great painter that did kind of narratives of the black story in the United States. I felt at that time when I was studying that I had something to say, but I didn't know what it was. It's like the same struggle that every artist goes through when they're young, you know? And something that takes like a lifetime to actually figure out. I was ambitious, you know? I wanted to fit into this whole scene, you know? When you're 17, it's a little premature, you know? You can't just jump in. You're too young. It's a big city. And you got like some life experience that you need to learn, you know? I totally crashed and burned, you know, on the drugs and everything. Like a good run on the drugs would maybe be like 2 years or something, and then it's hard to sustain, you know? So at one point I went back to Seattle, kind of with my tail between my legs, back to my family, which was like the most dysfunctional at this point place that you could ever be. My mom's a little crazy. I mean, not just figuratively, but like literally crazy at this point. And so I moved in with her, and it was just chaos. I wanted to keep making art, but because I wasn't in school and I didn't have any money, I didn't know. I needed to figure out how to make money at the same time so I could survive. So my brother at that time was skateboarding, and he was skateboarding for a company down in San Diego, California. And I took a bunch of Polaroids of art that I had made, and I sent them down to the company just kind of on a whim to try to see if I could drum up some kind of job or something. And they offered me basically a couch to stay on, you know? So I moved down there and I lived in a warehouse for like 2 years and learned how to draw skateboards and we were doing this and I was getting paid for this, but not much, you know, at the time, but it was still a way for me to get out of my chaos of my family and kind of figure out how to start living life and making money and that kind of thing. I wasn't really fulfilled, happy, kind of feeling good about my life. I got back into drugs again. This is kind of an on and off thing for a decade, I think. This is when the drug thing like really got bad, you know? Or I started winding up in jail and stuff, and eventually living in my car. And things got really chaotic down there. But I pulled off working for a few years. So after I went to jail, and then I got out of there and went to this like 1.5 year long rehabilitation thing that was like a court order through the state. That's when I started getting my life back together and kind of figuring out what I mean, I wasn't burdened by the drug addiction anymore, so I was able to kind of give schooling another shot. This is when I went over to Shepard Fairey's studio and asked if they had any work. And he actually gave me a desk. He just gave me a desk. And then I would do kind of like freelance stuff that I had built up from, all my connections from before. And then whenever he had work, he would pass it on to me. I worked with him for a couple of years, or for a year, I think. And then I thought, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to study design, so at least I can kind of survive, in the world. I didn't have the confidence. I mean, my ambition was still to paint, but I still needed to eat and have a place to live and everything. So design was like a surefire way to make money. And then I could paint on my spare time and develop that. It's funny because I realized like there's no way I'm going to go into like working in this corporate kind of world. I thought that I might have wanted that, but then I just reevaluated that like at the end of the study. So I applied to a graduate school that was in Detroit called Cranbrook, and they had a program there that was like it was a design program, but it was more avant-garde and expression-based and theory-based. So I went out there, and there was no curriculum, so you could make up your own curriculum, and it was a 2-year program. So I went out there and I studied with this guy, Elliot Earls, out there. And at that point, I started painting again, because this is what I really wanted to do, is do art. And it was funny because I'd have critiques there with people from visiting faculty would come in, and they'd say, I like what you're doing, but it's not design, At that point, right around the end of the 2 years, I had made 4 paintings in this kind of new style that I'd kind of figured out, which is the beginning of the evolution of this. Went back to Los Angeles. My ambition, I wanted to keep making art, but at the same time I needed to make money again, so I was doing design. So my compromise in that was that I would start doing designing books for artists, that was maybe my lot in life, So I started designing a book with a gallery owner that I knew. She came over to my house and she saw these 4 paintings that were just sitting on the floor in my house. And she asked me she said, I think I could sell these paintings. Like, I'm going to have a group show. Could I put them in the group show? And so I said, yeah, sure. And I didn't think that this little 4, it was only about, less than 1 meter big, these 4 paintings put together. I didn't think they were impressive enough, so I made it into like a panel, or 16 paintings. We did the show at her gallery, and this guy, Jeffrey Deitch, came to the show. He was the head of MoCA in Los Angeles for a while. He liked the paintings, and he bought this set of paintings. And then at that time he had a gallery in New York called Deitch Projects, and he took it and he put it in a show at Deitch Projects, and then took it to the Proper Art Basel in Miami. So I'd came back, and after years of not making any art, and then made this painting, and people liked it, and I'd sold it. And then I thought, I better take advantage of this and just continue kind of exploring this. And so I started making paintings again.